On today's News Monday episode, well, the Padres certainly made some news last week. Trading for Dylan Cease, going to talk a little bit more about that. Going to also talk about Tommy Pham potentially being very close to a deal with the Padres. Some more news, as well as answering some of your listener and viewer questions and comments. It's the Monday Show. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, March 18th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at LO_Padres, or Locked On Padres on YouTube if you want to see the final days of the hair. Tatis and Pac-Man will always be here, but the final days of my crazy flow, because I'm going to get a haircut in honor of it finally being some real baseball this week. Today's episode, guys, is going to be a recap of some of the news from last week. It's going to be a lot of fun and very excited to answer a lot of your questions and comments. Not a lot of questions necessarily this week, but a lot of comments, and honestly, I just really enjoy always keeping y'all on your toes, and you never know what's coming, so I'm just going to pick everybody. So we're going to be talking about that, guys. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And folks, to get started with today's episode, we're rehashing very quickly last week's biggest news, obviously. And it's really funny how, I like using this episode as a news and rumors and reports and stuff. It's been a while since news has happened since I've been doing this that was like it just happened. And that's what's so funny is that first we heard the rumors that Dylan Cease might get traded because of the fact that Gerrit Cole went down. And of course, it's the Padres that end up doing it, which is really, really funny in a lot of ways. And I love that so much. And look, I did a breakdown of this on Friday's episode. I think it was Friday's episode or Thursday's episode. If you want the full breakdown on Dylan Cease, you can go look at that. Talk with Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks. Great guy, good friend of mine. A lot of fun just comparing it. Where does this put the NL West? Where does it put the Padres in the spectrum of that? Where does it put the Padres in terms of overall rotations? All that sort of stuff. But I did like reading an article from Dennis Lin that came out mentioning that, Dylan Cease has traveled all the way to Seoul himself because he hasn't, he wants to meet the team and stuff, even if he's not going to be pitching in those two exhibition games. It's going to be Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove, if I'm not mistaken, with those first two starts. Let me check the second start. Yeah, it's Musgrove projected. Still, though, that's really cool. And then in terms of also Dylan Cease stuff, because I am a absolute just unapologetic, what's the word? Sellout, I guess is the word. Oh yeah, I'm going to be doing more Dylan Cease content this week, I guess. Tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about some of the potential drawbacks on the Dylan Cease trade, the naysayers. I'm going to give the devil's advocate approach to it tomorrow. So that should be a lot of fun, just to enter a new character, because I've been super pro on the trade. I think it's a good trade. I think that it makes a lot of sense, but it is worth talking about a lot of the potential negatives for not just him as a player, but what it means for the team and going forward. So look forward to that tomorrow as the last non-game recap episode. That's crazy, right? That's really fun. So look forward to that tomorrow's show. In terms of some other news, though, Blake Snell, man. So let me get this straight. We had Gerrit Cole go from DEFCON 1, everyone freaking out that this guy needs Tommy John surgery, to, Dylan Cease is available, to Dylan Cease getting traded before Blake Snell finally signed. That's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen, with this. And I could go on a whole tangent about how I just cannot stand how long this stuff takes. By the way, JD Martinez is still out there. Jordan Montgomery is still out there. It is really weird, and it's actually a little bit concerning to the point where if I'm a team, I'm really worried about signing these guys because I know that they're probably doing workouts on their own and all that stuff, but I still think there's something to be said for not being on a team until this late into spring training and potentially even opening day. I mean, the Padres we're going to talk about another move they might make in a second. if they make that move, like, it will be that the team has literally played a real game that counts. You know what I mean? Before we finally like have all these free agents signed. It's weird. Some will call it a Boris thing. I will call it just a baseball thing. And even if it is a Boris thing, it is still primarily baseball and cheap owners and such and such. But Blake Snell, it came out on Friday that the Astros are potentially close to a deal with him, which is great news for Padres fans. First of all, I know you might be a little bit upset that we're losing Snell, but it is great news that you won't have to even see him. You know what I mean? Now, if you want to just watch Astros games to root for him, that's fine. But the potential bad effect of this would have been if he signed with the Giants, which I think was a very real possibility for a long time. But hopefully, based on this report and kind of the rumors, that is not going to happen. It is a nightmare for all American League teams, and it is once again a reminder of how silly baseball can be. It's a fun sport, don't get me wrong, but it is really lame how, don't get me wrong, the NBA has issues. The NFL certainly has issues with its product, but it is frustrating that it seems like there's only 6 teams every year that are actually going to go after the fun free agents. And I'm not saying that like sometimes those free agents don't pan out. They don't. But a lot of those players end up helping you win World Series. We literally just saw it last year with Corey Seager, for example. I'm not saying Snell is a Corey Seager level free agent, but it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes that it's like, oh, the Astros get someone. The rich get richer. In this case, it being a team that has 2 World Series titles since 2016 or 2017, and then it has made the ALCS like every single year since then, and then every team in the American League is just going to be like, yeah, sure, we'll just let him get Blake Snell. The Yankees are going to be like, cool, we've only literally made one big splash in the last like 6 years, which is Juan Soto. That was like unexpected and like aggressive. That's basically it. And we're also going to let Snell leave, and we're going to let Dylan Cease go to the Padres, because that's just what's going on with the sport right now. The vibes aren't always great when it comes to teams trying, I guess. But congrats to the Astros if this does happen. Interestingly enough, reportedly, Snell wants a 2-year, $66 million deal. That is the rumor that is going around right now. And he wants an opt-out after the year, or the first year, after 2024. I think, and this was actually an interesting thing that got brought up a while ago. I don't think we brought up enough attention to it. And yes, it does have something to do with the Padres. It has something to do with every team. When Carlos Correa signed that contract with the Twins, if you guys remember, he did the LeBron contract, as a lot of people say, where you give the player opt-outs after each year, and since the player is theoretically still at their prime, it's worth it if you're paying them a lot of money, because then they could just opt out, and if they have an amazing year, they'll want to opt out so they can go get their chunky contract elsewhere, right? So that's potentially what Correa might have kickstarted a little bit more. You've seen a lot of that this offseason. You saw that with Matt Chapman. You've seen that with Cody Bellinger. And now you might get that with Blake Snell. Now, that is a little bit part to the Boris thing, and maybe Boris is, some people think he's washed. There's been a lot of funny memes about calling him like he's on his Godfather Part 3. You know what I mean? Like he's just past his prime. But I do think that there's something to be said for, this is interesting. Like, you pay a player a lot of money, and it's going to stink if it hits you for the average annual value, but it's not long term. So could this potentially get teams to try a little bit more if it means that they're only committing money to this year? And if the player goes off, they're like, cool, they're going to go elsewhere and get a big deal. Or if they're not very good, it's like, okay, well, there's only 2 more years of this. And in the case of Snell, it would be this year and next year. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there into the void, just an observation. Let me know what you think. If you think we might see some more contracts like this, because honestly, I don't know if we will. I think players want the security. I think you've seen with the arbitration process, teams like the Braves, even to an extent like the Mariners with Julio Rodriguez, have taken advantage of the fact that players clearly freaking hate arbitration, and they should. It's dumb that there's like 5 years you have to play before you could finally make the big money, or even some semblance of money. Excuse me. You get my point. Like, that you can control your destiny a little bit more. I know that, like, guys who are whatever, like Dylan Cease is still in arbitration right now, but he's making like $8 million a year. I don't mean to put it that way, but just a sense of, do players want a little bit more freedom to be able to have that great year and go elsewhere, or, have some security to be like, I'm locked in for a lot of money per year, so even if it goes bad, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Guys. That's all I do out here. I just throw things out there. And we got more news to talk about, guys, but before we get into that, let me just talk to you about something that is not news for people who have been listening to this podcast, or just listen to today's episode. At the top of the podcast, we talked about them already. It's FanDuel, folks. And here's the thing. Get those brackets ready, and whether you're betting on a big upset or on a 1 seed, maybe you're going all in on Iowa, the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Not going to lie to you, have no idea what's going on in the men's, and that's not me pandering. I just don't know. But it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook, folks. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. Yeah, that's $200, folks. You heard that right. $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Very, very fun. March Madness kicking off. Baseball kicking off. You want to go check out the futures. You want to bet Tatis for MVP? Guess what? That makes a whole lot of sense. You want to bet Machado? Go ahead. You want to bet Dylan C. Cy Young? I actually haven't checked the odds for that in the National League. It's actually, I don't know. That would actually be an interesting one to sprinkle on because he's had Cy Young stuff before. So anyway, go check that out, guys. FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops and baseball and hockey and whatever until it all goes down. But ladies and gentlemen, that isn't it. I just want to give you a reminder. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. It's very cool. And baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. And it'll be really cool. You're basically going to get kind of the division preview that I recorded with all the NL West hosts. That'll be firing off all over there. So go check that out. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want something to look forward to, maybe you're doing some work, some busy work, whatever, just throw that on in the background. You'll be playing all sorts of baseball goodness on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. And just like that, folks, we're back here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Oh yeah. We're back, folks. We're back. Fully back. We've never been more back, some would say. Some might say that. And in terms of never being more back, I've already talked about Snell and Cease. Enough of the pitchers. Tommy Pham. Apparently, the Padres are very close to signing the guy we've all been talking about for the last 2 weeks to a 1-year deal per Bob Nightingale between $3 to $4 million. This is big news, obviously. It makes sense. This has been a team that's been after these guys for a while. And you got the other free agents signed to other teams. Michael A. Taylor just signed. Adam Duvall just signed. Eddie Rosario already signed a couple weeks ago. Those were the last type of candidates that the Padres could have to give them some outfield depth, particularly in left field, because center field, Jackson Merrill, that was going to be the next thing. I'm stomping on it a little bit, but he's clear. He's going to be on the opening day roster. That's what it sounds like. Very, very cool. John Morosi actually tweeted that, so that was awesome. Shouts to Morosi. You got it wrong with the Ohtani thing, and that was a bummer because it made me very sad. But from Seoul, Jackson Merrill has won the Padres opening day center field job, which is really cool. Very excited for that. Expected, but still really cool because there's still a universe in which he showed up to spring training and, underperformed a little bit. But anyway, Tommy Pham. Big get, obviously, if this goes through, and I'm excited for it because I think that Tommy Pham will be the rare kind of retread for the Padres. So I'm just kind of curious to see how that works out in terms of clubhouse vibes and whatnot. He did have a little bit of a weird vibe when he was in San Diego. You had the stabbing incident, not that that's his fault or anything like that. I don't really know the full story behind that, but just there was weird vibes with Pham when he was on the team. He did underperform greatly in the second half, which is some people will bring up, but so did literally everybody else in 2021. It wasn't just him. And last year, 110 WRC plus, 1.8 F4. He is the type of player that a contending team could really use. Maybe he's ready to be on this Padres team. Maybe he's like, yeah, that last time didn't go well. 103 WRC plus with them in 2021, 79 in 2020, which wasn't great. He's a negative defensively, which isn't great, but the on-base skills. You don't need power from this guy. He could steal a couple bags, and the fact that he's got speed, he's a veteran, which I think is going to be important for a team like this that has had some questions with personalities and, clubhouse leadership, and they have some young players on the team that are going to be showing up this year especially, so I think it makes sense. He was actually quite good for the Mets last year, had some timely hits for the D-backs in the playoff run, which was nice. And again, number one thing with him, on-base guy. And I don't think that that's going to be something that changes. You know what I mean? There's a world in which Michael A. Taylor or, Eddie Rosario and Adam Duvall are better examples, actually, because Michael A. Taylor is actually not that old from what I remember. But there's the potential that Duvall and Eddie Rosario just completely fall off because they're only good mostly at one thing, which is hitting for power, especially with those two. While Pham, not necessarily a power guy, he could maybe hit you 10 to 15 home runs, but he's an on-base guy, and he's got the type of plate discipline that you see. It's like Juan Soto light. I'm not saying he's like Juan Soto exactly, but in terms of outside zone swing percentage, in terms of chase rate, whatever you want to look at, he's up there in terms of some of the best. And most importantly, this news says 1-year deal. That is my biggest thing. If you can get any players on this team that are just 1-year deal type of players, I'd be super all down for that. I want to have as little money into next offseason as possible. I know that they're going to get rid of the Hosmer thing, and I know there's some free agents that'll come off the books, but I just want to be a little bit more free. I want to have some space. And if you look at his metrics, really good. Weighted on base, expected batting average. It doesn't seem like what Pham did last year was abnormal or lucky. And that's really, really important because some other players that are out there, like Cody Bellinger was a big one. There's a lot of people that think that the expected weighted on base was way too off. His was like the difference of like 40 points. While, for example, Tommy Pham, his expected weighted on base was actually 30 points higher than what it actually was last year. So he was really good and actually got a little bit unlucky in some regards. So shouts to Pham. I hope this happens. And it feels right this time around, especially if he like wants to come back. Maybe that's a little bit of a sign that he gets along with the guys, and maybe we just didn't totally realize it. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, the MVP, Cardinals version of him is probably gone, but I'm telling you, don't sleep on this. I think this could be the perfect time. And also, he doesn't have to play every day. You have Profar. You have potentially some other young guys. Maybe you move Merrill to left field every now and then. There's some room there. So shouts to Pham. Last little news update I want to talk about, though. Talked a little bit too much about him. Graham Pauley is going to Seoul. He's already there. This isn't like breaking news, but I just want to mention this because I highly recommend checking out episode I did with Aram Late in a while ago. Just type in like Locked On Padres Aram Late and you'll probably find it. Talking about the Padres farm system and how stacked it was low key. And Aram, I've been talking about this kid for a while, and full disclosure, I work for Just Baseball as a contributor. I'm a staff writer, and I have a new little thing coming up for them soon that you should see next week. So there is a little bit of bias to saying this, but I genuinely have frequented the space and talked with this kid for a long time, and he just never misses on prospects. He thinks he's special, and that's a direct quote. I'm really excited for him. I want to see him in Seoul. I hope he potentially stays with the team in opening day. Sounds like Jackson Merrill will. Seems like just a hitter. That's what the vibe I'm getting. And I've been talking about this guy all off season as well, and Aram's a big part of that. So really cool to see him make that roster. And in general, bunch of guys, because of Machado DHing, could lead to some fun lineups. Like there are days when Hassan Kim might play third base, and then Bogarts goes to short, and then Cronenworth to second base, and then maybe Graham Pauley plays first, right? Like it's going to be interesting and kind of fun because of Machado having to DH. Until then, trying out some new combinations. Maybe Eggy Rosario plays some games at third. Maybe, barring an injury, maybe Matthew Batten gets called up and plays third base for a little bit. I think that there's a lot of intrigue because of that absence of Machado at third. There's not a lockdown there. And keep that in mind whenever I'm talking about roster flexibility. Machado is amazing. That's not what I'm saying. But this is why you don't want to necessarily have every position locked in for years and years, because then you can just kind of try people out. It's just exciting and fun, and you can play more matchup games, especially if you have a good manager that can result in that, if you have good depth, which remains to be seen. That's something that I like. So I'm really looking forward to that. Shouts to Graham Pauley. I have very, very high expectations for him. Same thing for Merrill, but I don't think enough people are talking about Pauley. I'm really excited. He had a fun little quote at the end of the Dennis Lin piece on Dylan Cease, by the way, so go check that out. But folks, we're not done. We're not done. We're not done, ladies and gentlemen. We got to get into the Monday Fun Day mailbag screenshots, ladies and gentlemen. And I say screenshots because that's how I pull this up. I don't post them on the actual YouTube. I don't know. I just don't want to totally flame people sometimes, but I do say you're at and stuff like that. And there's some comments we got to go over, including listener question as well, which I'm very excited for, from longtime listener of the podcast. We're going to get onto all of that in just a second, folks. But first, ladies and gentlemen, let me take a second to talk to you about... Oh, what is he going to say? What do you think I'm going to say? I want you guys to guess. I bet you're not going to get it. Nope, you're not going to get it. I guarantee you. eBay Motors, ladies and gentlemen. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. It is fantastic. What do I have to say? eBay Motors is here for you guys. They have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. I know it's a bar. I know it sounds amazing. It's great, right? Oh yeah, it's real good. It's a good one. Shouts to I didn't come up with it though. That's the good folks over at eBay Motors. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and take home that gold. Ladies and gentlemen, keep your ride or die alive. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Go check it out. They will help you out, even if you know nothing about cars. They got you covered with eBay Motors. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Your team every day. We're vibing. We're thriving. Let's get into the listener part of the show. The first thing I want to get into is an actual question before we start reading the YouTube comments, ladies and gentlemen. This one comes from Rama Murdy, longtime listener of the podcast, at Rama_Murdy on Twitter. He DM'd asking, hey, Javier, question for today's podcast. What are you most excited about for this Padres team and as it is currently set, and what are you most scared about? So first of all, the shouts to you, always like coming through with the Monday question. I appreciate that. And guys, remember, DM me, either account. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter too much. Leave some comments, whatever you want. You could say mailbag, or you could just leave an observation and it might get picked for the show. But if you DM me, that's a guarantee. If you DM me and ask me a question, I'll definitely answer it on the show. Comments is like kind of the Wild West. I'm picking and choosing. You never know. It's like the claw machine from Toy Story. You just don't know if you're going to be chosen or not. You know what I mean? But if you DM me, you'll get it for sure. That was an overly elaborate explanation. But anyway, in terms of what I'm most excited for this year, great question, first of all, because this doesn't necessarily mean good or bad, but what I'm most excited for, it's really obvious, and it's not going to excite a lot of people, but I'm going to say there's two things. And I think number one is that I think that there's a real, genuinely kind of expected reason to believe that we get the MVP Tatis back. And what's fun about that is it's not just that he's going to be good. Because, for example, if someone told me just Manny Machado is going to be great MVP this year, that'd be cool too. But Tatis is another world. He's another stratosphere when he's on. For people that don't remember, just really quickly, last year, like 113 WRC plus for Tatis, which was way below his career average. Every year before then, this was a 150 WRC plus guy, which is obscene and is MVP caliber. This is a guy that put up 3.3 F4 in 2020, which is obscene. Rookie year 3.1 and then 7.3 when he finished third in MVP voting. The power, everything. He's an amazing batter. And the swagger, right? Like, that's the real fun part, and why I'm saying that this is my most excited thing is because the fun side of Tatis can be back bigger than ever. And we didn't really see a lot of fun. We didn't see a lot of fun from a lot of guys last year because that's what happens when you're losing, but we didn't see it from him especially. We saw glimpses. He had this big home run in August. I forgot against who it was. Maybe it was the D-backs. In like inconsequential August game. But you saw how nuts Petco went. You watch how excited he was. So very excited for that. And the next thing with you, Luis Campusano, because I think once again, to a smaller degree, he's being underrated. I just think people are like, this guy is hit at every level. And last year when he actually got playing time, he continued to hit. So even if he's not necessarily like this all-star or anything like that, I'm just excited to talk about the Campusano hive over and over, as I did last year. And then the next thing, in terms of scared, injuries is a cop-out, so I'm not going to say that. I will say one of my fears is that none of the young guys work out at all. Think similar to CJ Abrams' debut with the Padres. Now, that wasn't expected or even needed because Ha-Seong Kim was right there. I was a proponent of starting Kim. So for everyone who says I'm a hater because I tried to trade him all offseason, just so you know, I was on board early. You know what I mean? I was on board real early after that rookie season. Something similar to Abrams, where Pauley struggles, Merrill struggles big time, and all of a sudden, all you have in center field is Jose Azocar and Jackson Merrill, and if they're both negatives, that could be a big problem. If you look at the course of baseball, it seems like good center fielders are a thing, and the Padres have not really had that for a while now, so that's a fear. If Jerks and Profar is still bad, then all of a sudden you need some reinforcements there, which is why I think you need Pham. But I'd say the young guy is just totally missing. Robbie Snelling doesn't work out. Maybe we hear something about some prospects, right? Like we hear that Dylan Lesko has, taken a step back, that his progression's not there. Same thing for Ethan Salas. But I'd say it's probably the young guys for me that I'd be a little bit scared about potentially the team trying to win now, that them not getting any reinforcements from some of their farm guys, some of their, Ryan Berger even, right? Like he might make his debut a little bit later. Robbie Snelling is another one. So that's kind of one of my fears, is that the depth is that they just don't. I think this team is going to have more depth than it usually has. I'm just a little bit worried about that. And in general, it's just those outfield positions, man. There's a world. They are projected currently to have some of the lowest FWAR among every team in baseball, with left field and center field. So they really are counting a lot on these guys to come through. And I'm worried that they're hoping so much that what Jackson Merrill could be is what they want him to be now. And I think that that's scary when you're relying on that so much. But then again, he is a top level prospect, right? He still is. But I'm just saying that is a little bit of a fear, and that the Padres don't quite have a replacement for him. That could be a problem. But that's it for that question. Thank you, Ron Murray, as always, for sending in your questions. But now let's get into some comments. We're going to get through these pretty quickly, so hang on tight. Although I know that saying quickly for me, longtime listeners, doesn't mean much because I always talk too much, but alas, here we go. At Balkan T5450 says 1080 HD, please. To that I say I'll work on it. I don't necessarily have the best camera equipment in the world. I love my camera. I love my webcam. But for people who are wondering about quality, I know that sometimes you guys have said that the audio isn't perfect. I don't know why that's the case. I've still been trying to figure that out on the OBS software that I use to record. But in terms of that and the 1080, look, I'm using what I got, so I'll try. But I can't necessarily guarantee the video quality to be better if I don't have, like, incredible software stuff. What can I say? Like, it's just not my thing, so I don't know. Anyway, next comment, ladies and gentlemen, is from, let's see here, Deep Fried Fryer says, can we get a new host for Locked On Padres? This guy's cringe every day. Here's what I want to say, first of all. I'm bringing up this comment because I think sometimes listeners think that I'm, like, hurt by these comments. I laugh at them usually because it's just weird to hate sometimes. Like, especially on me. I'm like some random online that talks about the Padres every day. Like, I don't know, like, use your hatred elsewhere. But I want to give a shout out to the people who do send some really kind messages, because while I do highlight these mean things every now and then on here, a lot of you have been sending really kind messages, whether it be Twitter, whether it be YouTube comments. In this very comment, there's a reply that ratioed this guy saying, he's cringe because he speaks correctly and has a positive vibe. Rethink your outlook on life. Thank you. And that one's from at Michael B33581. I'm going to pretend that you're Michael B. Jordan. Thank you. Love your movies. But in all seriousness, I just want to highlight, like, a lot of you guys are super duper nice, and I greatly appreciate it. All the comments, I never get tired of them. And I'm glad that I can add even just a little bit of joy to your day. Romeo Sayek also commented, you're the man, Javier. Don't let the haters get to you. And at Tommy Strews 4547 with some high praise. This is the best Padres commentator, in my opinion. Well, in my opinion, it's still Don Ursillo. But still, I take your compliment. Thank you very much, sir. I really greatly appreciate it. That's it. Thank you so much, guys. Seriously, never gets tiring. Next comment, Wolfpack2077 says, when was 31 over the hill? This comes from me talking about just some of the contract situations and my episode on the Padres spending. And basically what I brought up was they have guys on the other side of 30, the wrong side of 30, like Machado, like Bogarts, and then you have Tatis, that are making a lot of money, and it's going to increase, right? Machado's going to make more money. It was a backloaded contract. Tatis right now, if I'm not mistaken, is making around $14 million. And soon that is going to escalate big time. It is one of the blessings of these backloaded contracts is that you can sign your stars, and if you're a team that's in a position to win now, you can backload it. But he's soon going to be making a whole lot more. This next year, it's 20 million, then 20, 25. Like, it gets really up there soon. So you have to just keep that in mind, is all I'm saying. And same thing goes for Manny Machado. I believe his is backloaded as well. I think Bogarts is pretty even. Yeah. So after this coming season, 13 million one more year, then 21, 35 the rest of the way. So those things are going to hurt. So I'm basically bringing up that this is still a team that's kind of wanting to be in a win now sort of situation, because those guys are going to get only more expensive. So you kind of want to balance having a little bit of money to spend, like I've mentioned, because of the stacked free agent class, but not signing any more guys to like 5-6 year deals necessarily. So it's a tough game to play, but because you've done all these contracts, you got to watch out for that, in my opinion. So What do I know? I'm just a fool on the internet, but that's what I meant. I'm not saying 30's old. I'm just saying that the money gets up, and usually you're not going to get better as a player post that. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're Bogarts, it's doubtful that, like, if you're getting older and you already had a little bit of a down year, it's usually more likely that you could still be good, but you're going to have a fall off one way or another, or you're just going to be a 3-win player for the next 6 years. Not horrible, but it's not what you paid for necessarily. So it's just something to keep in mind. Next question. Giants, although not a question, but Hope Springs Eternal 26-24. Giants do not have the pitching. They only have one reliable starting pitcher. They will not sign Blake Snell. Here's the thing. Y'all got to stop counting out the Giants. It's a weird team, and they got some mojo going on over there. I think that they probably won't sign Snell, but with that rumor about the Astros, maybe they're trying to get the Giants to cave in and pay. We'll have to see. I'm just only highlighting this comment to say, for something that says Hope Springs Eternal, don't count out the Giants fully. I really am high on that team. I think Jung Ho Lee is going to be awesome. And in terms of their pitching, Logan Webb is the surefire thing. Top 5 potential pitcher in baseball. Kyle Harrison, big-time prospect, seems to be wowing a lot of people. Alex Cobb, quality pitcher, although not great for a number 3. Jordan Hicks, hey, you guys want to hate, they're kind of doing what we did with Seth Lugo last year, right? A reliever turned starting pitcher that you're giving a kind of smaller-ish contract. That could work out for them. Can't speak for the rest of the rotation, though. And then Robbie Ray could be helpful down the line, but I'm not sure how much elsewhere. They're probably going to have a really good bullpen. I'm basically saying this is, guys, I really genuinely think any team can finish second in this division this year. I really do. Next comment was actually a reply to my comment, where I said, I think he's had in one incredible year. This is about Cease, but a couple solid ones, kind of like Snell before last year. I think with a better team and better defense, more importantly, can help him reach that ceiling again. And at Silas Robert Shaw, 8122, says, is a full year 3.9 ERA solid? It's meh to me. And his partial years before that, were above 4. Obviously, 22 was a great year for him. And as people have said, the Sox sucked last year. Hopefully being on a competitive team and Niebla working some juju can help him have a couple of good years for us. I agree. And I will warn everyone that the ERA doesn't always tell the full story. I think that ERA is still important, don't get me wrong. And at some point when expected stats keep saying that your ERA is going to go down, but it doesn't, it's worth being like, well, this guy just doesn't have it. But with Dylan Cease, I just think that he's the type of pitcher where you really do need to take that into account. This is a terrible team in the White Sox, and it's a bad defensive team. And if you look at the years before then, he's actually had he had a productive year in 2021 too. 3.91 ERA, but that's when the strikeout stuff really came through. And if you think about it, let's say expected ERA of 3.65, that's still really, really good. So don't get me wrong, the high ERA isn't great, but you also have to take into account the innings pitched. The fact that this guy has been a staple of that, he throws a lot of innings, he can be a lot better in that regard. Yes, the walks and the issues with control are there, but my thing is, you're not going to get Garrett Cole. Like, you can't look at every pitcher as, if you're not like this solidified guaranteed ace, then what are we doing? I don't think you should look at it that way. And I'm not saying you necessarily are, but yes, 3.9 ERA, but all those numbers suggest that it was bloated a bit, and he's got a really terrible defense behind him. And it's Petco, so it's probably going to be a lot better for him. And most importantly, though, to me, the stuff is there. I don't care if his fastball velo went down a tad bit last year. Not enough for me to be concerned. The strikeout stuff is something to behold. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun with Cease for sure. Even if he might have a couple starts where you're like, what is this? Next up. Charles Darwin 180 says, do we think this will make the Padres a 500 team now? Here's my thing. I think that they already were a 500 team before this trade. I think this is the type of move that increases their ceiling, and definitely increases their ceiling if they were to make the postseason. Because then all of a sudden, when you make the postseason, the comfort of being able to say, we don't have to rely on Drew Thorpe, Robbie Snelling as like these breakout prospect guys, which could totally happen. There's been some teams that have had good runs because their younger guys broke out. But it's nice to say we can throw out a Darvish, Musgrove, King, or Dylan Cease instead of just 2 of the 3 of the Hydra, as I've called them before, with Musgrove, Darvish, and King being really injury prone. That you just feel a lot more comfortable about that, especially to make the playoffs. So I think they're already a 500 team. I just think that this raises their ceiling. Last question, that last comment, I should say, at Mr. J. Willis 12, talking yourself into circles trying to explain how the Padres aren't the Dodgers' little brother is funny, LMFAO. I'm not saying that the Padres aren't the little brother. They very clearly are. I don't know where you're getting that from. But once again, I want to emphasize that I got a lot of comments also saying it's not a rivalry. I get those like every other day, frankly. Not every other day. Every other week, I get a comment like anytime anything Dodgers happens. I posted that blog on Twitter about them saying that we shouldn't be called the Padres because Tatis and Profar are too disrespectful and Padres evokes a sense of respect, so they should change the name. Crazy stuff. First of all, I don't believe that a nascent rivalry doesn't still count as a rivalry of its own. I don't care how new it is. It still counts. Some of the best rivalries are the ones that start heating up recently. Look at the NBA. That's why everyone loves talking about them. Remember Clippers Warriors back in the day? It still counts, man. Just because it's not Red Sox Yankees doesn't mean it doesn't count as a rivalry, right? It could still be pretty new. And if you actually watch these teams, especially in 2020 and 2021, there was clearly fire there, which is what made them so exciting. And then lastly, again, my point has just been, I think 2020 counts. Absolutely counts. I'm just saying that you guys act like you're, New England Patriots, that you run everything. You kind of don't. Oh, well, they make the playoffs every year. And if not for 2017, I'm like, okay, well, for a team that loses every year in the playoffs, you're going to say that for sure that if the Astros didn't have the cheating stuff, that you would have won. It's like, well, you've lost to everybody else. What? So now we have to give you the benefit of the doubt? We have to just trust you on this? Make that leap of faith? I don't know about that. So again, that's my only thing. No, I disagree when people say 2020 doesn't count. I think it absolutely does. It's just that y'all got to just settle down a little bit. So that's my take on that, guys. Got to get a little bit of Dodger slander in there especially before this week. With that all being said, though, that about does it for today's edition of Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Tomorrow's episode talking about the downside, playing devil's advocate on the Dylan Cease trade. And I'm going to sell you as best as I can on why this was a bad move for the Padres. That's right. Embrace debate. You know what I mean? First take coming up next. In terms of the future of the show as well, Wednesday and Thursday, game recaps. It's going to be a lot of fun, giving you just all the vibes, talking about the Seoul series Wednesday and Thursday. I will be up watching those games. And if you're wondering, how are you getting up? It's at 6 in the morning. Well, for you guys, it's at like 3 in the morning if I get the time zones right. And also, it's like the first game of the season. I think it'll just wake me up knowing that I get Padres baseball. So we're going to talk about that. And then on Friday, we're going to take a look at, speaking of Preller and these big trades, let's take a look at all the previous trades that they've made over the past few years, the big ones, and see how they've aged. Because I think there's this idea that Preller has just been missing all the time. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So that'll be a lot of fun. Stay tuned, guys. Until next time, though, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.